Eicma, the biggest motorcycle trade show of the year, has been and gone, and we worked our butts off trying to cover as many new bikes as possible. Naturally though, with it being such a massive show, we couldn't fit them all into the week. And so in this video, we'll go through all of the major manufacturers with the best bikes from Eicma 2025. Now, I was expecting Aprilia to launch a middleweight adventure bike called the Touareg 457. They've been teasing it over the year on their social media accounts, but unfortunately it wasn't to be, and so basically we were left with a couple of scooters, I think, a GP version of the RS 457 sports bike, and then a bunch of new graphics for the factory variants of their, existing models. So the RS V4 factory, the Tuono V4 factory, the RS 660 factory, and the Tuono 660 factory as well. I will say we didn't make it down to the stand because I didn't think there was anything substantial from a technical perspective. But when I saw the picture of these new factory variants with this stripy kind of graphical finish, well, I will say, I kind of wished I'd seen them in the flesh because I think they look really, really good. The V4s have a purple, white, red and black. The 660s substitute that purple for more of a fluorescent yellow. And I think although there were no particular technical changes that improved them for 2026, a fresh, punchy, lively aesthetic like that might be enough to get a few punters through the Aprilia dealer doors next year. Perhaps one of the reasons they didn't launch their mid-capacity adventure bike is because BMW announced theirs, the F450GS, and it was a huge hit. There's been so much hype around this bike since they first showed the concept last year at Eicma, and so yeah, Aprilia might not have wanted to go head-to-head against it. I do think BMW have done a good job as well. It's a little more expensive than some of the competition perhaps, but there's a nice array of specs. You can go for cast wheels for something more road-biased. You can get the trophy finish that looks more off-roady and fit it with the spoked wheels. There's also different levels of suspension, so you can go for the sport pack so you get more adjustability. And so really you should be able to tailor it to the sort of riding you want to do. Other than that though, well, they didn't really announce anything else, but this is such a big deal for them that it's no big surprise. Although I will say we saw the Vision CE electric scooter thing with a roof that kind of harks back to their C1, and it's self-balancing. So while I was filming the F450GS, I could see that on the stand doing a couple of demos, and the fact that it was just standing there on its own without a stand, I think was very impressive. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more developments on that particular concept bike. But look, before we get on to the next brand, I just want to say a massive thanks to MCL or Motorcycle Life for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. It's coming up very soon. It starts on the 15th, I think, through to the 23rd of November at the NEC in Birmingham here in the UK again. And so if you want to see any of these bikes in the flesh, or a lot of these bikes anyway, and be able to sit on them and be able to speak to the brands about the particular bike you're interested in, then I'd thoroughly recommend getting yourself down there. And we are very lucky, I suppose, in the UK for it to be so close after Eicma, because we'll be amongst the first in the world to be able to see these bikes in the flesh. Not only does the exhibitor list contain most of these major brands that we're talking about here today, but also you've got the opportunity to test ride some bikes, you've got rolling roads, you've got expert lab talks, you've got the action show, and so there's loads to see to have a great day out on top of seeing these brand new bikes. And also, myself and Tim will be working our way around on the Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe, capturing a few more videos, getting them in the bag. And so if you do see us, please do say hello. It'd be lovely to meet a few people who watch the channel. So yeah, there are links down in the description below. You can pick up a standard ticket, or there's a special deal where you pay an extra £6 and you get this road skin t-shirt thrown in, which is pretty cool. And so like I say, have a look at the links down below. You can see everything that's on, the whole schedule, all the manufacturers that will be there. And massive thanks to MCL for their support, and hopefully see a few of you down there. Now, one bike I'd thoroughly recommend going and checking out is the new Thunderbolt from BSA, which was a bit of a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting them to launch an adventure bike, but I've got to say, it actually looks really quite good. I think it's the exact same 350 liquid cooled single as their Bantam, which was announced earlier this year. So it's not particularly groundbreaking, let's say, in terms of performance. It's about 30 horsepower peak and about 30 newton meters of peak torque. But what I liked about this bike is the semi-retro styling package, which I think looks really good. And also they've given it what looks like a fairly decent spec when it comes to off-road riding. You've got spoke wheels, the 21-inch up front, I think 200mm of travel on the fork and 180 at the rear. They swapped the rear shocks from the Bantam, the twin shocks, for a monoshock, so it should get a little bit better performance. That's probably one of the factors in getting that extra travel as well. It looks like a decent riding position. It's got this nice little dash that's got some analog style graphics on it as well. And so all round, if it hits a good price point, I think this one's going to be a strong seller and a great alternative to something like a Himalayan if you were thinking about one of those. CF Moto launched their 1000 MTX. This is one of the bikes we did cover. It's a new adventure bike with a parallel twin. Looks really well spec'd. A little bit of KTM in it, as per usual with some of these CF Moto bikes. I think it might be an engine that's either co-designed or derived from the 990 parallel twin, but also you've got that low-hanging fuel tank either side. What I like about these CF Motos though is the styling package they do. They've really hit their stride with a distinctive and consistent approach, I think, to how they make the bikes look. And so yeah, unfortunately no price on this one as of yet, as with a lot of the bikes in this list, but I'd expect it to undercut some of the competition and be potentially a good seller. Now, a couple of other bikes from them that we didn't cover that did cause, a bit of a stir were the 675 NK-GP. Basically a hot version of their 675 NK Triple existing naked. I love the styling on this one as well. I like the graphical finish. It's got premium components as well, so definitely one to look at if you fancy something a bit more sporty than the regular NK. And then perhaps the most important development was this new V4 SR-RR prototype. It's a full-on racing level sports bike with no stone unturned in terms of getting the most performance out of it, with a new 90-degree V4 engine that makes over 210 horsepower, and it's still got a curb weight of under 200 kilos. It's also got boatloads of tech, including adaptive aero, I believe, which changes the winglets depending on the bike's behavior. And so for me, this one is a real sign that perhaps you should start taking CF Moto and other Chinese manufacturers pretty seriously, because this is not just a cheap knockoff of another bike. This is something that's built to go properly, and it looks pretty impressive. On to Ducati, we covered the Hypermotard V2. I think that's going to be a brilliant bike. It's shed so much weight, 13 kilograms versus the previous gen Hypermotard 950. The new V2 engine, which I've said many times over, I think is fantastic and very lively and fun, so it suits this character of bike. And I also really like the white and silver and red paint job on that SP version. I think that looks amazing. And then also we got the preview of the new Desert X, which I'd expect in the next few months. And that's also moving over to that V2 engine platform. But on top of that, two things I spotted that we didn't actually get to cover because they're perhaps more minor updates. But the V2s, so the Street Fighter and the Panigale V2, are now available in yellow, which I think looks amazing. Up until now, a lot of their new bikes have just been in the flat Ducati red. Ducati's always looked brilliant, I think, in that yellow, right back through many, many years that they've been doing it. And these are no different. So if you want something a little different than the standard, typical finish, then definitely go and have a look at these. They're already on the Ducati website if you click down and go to the color selector. But also, if you want something that really stands out, then they also announced for the Panigale V2 a Marc Marquez version and a Pecco Bagnaia version as well. Those ones were a little more expensive. I think you pay, $17,395 for a standard Panigale V2S. For the Marquez or the Bagnaia, you're looking at $19,995. But they do look really quite nice, and they've gone for a slightly different finish, let's say, on each. It's more like a camo finish on the Bagnaia bike. The Marquez has a big 93 across it. Something just a little bit special, and I think they'll both be fantastic bikes to ride. I love the Panigale V2. Interestingly, Harley did bring some new announcements, and I think that's maybe a bit of a change of strategy. They typically reserve all their new bikes for January, but it seems like they're doing a split announcement this year, with some of them being announced for Eicma and then more to follow on the 14th of January, I believe. So we'll come back with the rest of their new announcements as we do every year in January. But for now, they announced some new paint across quite a few models. The Pan America stood out to me as looking a little bit different. I quite like that one. And then also a solo trim pack for some bikes to give them a bit of a sleeker aesthetic. Then they also announced a new Bagger World Cup, co-developed with MotoGP. I think this is the evolution of the King of the Baggers racing that's got so popular in America. They're now saying it's a global racing series for 2026, and they had one of the bikes on the stand in order to show, what we can expect to see out on the track. I think what's perhaps most surprising about it, though, is it's been co-developed with Dorna, who are the MotoGP owners, and so these 6 rounds will actually support, I think, actual MotoGP racing, which is just crazy how popular this form of racing's got, and it's actually gone outside America now. I'll certainly be giving it a watch to see how much fun it really is to spectate on. Now, moving on to Honda, and they've done a great job in recent years of providing good value for money in order to match perhaps the current economic climate. I think it started with the CB750F Hornet, which kind of reset our expectations of what you can get for your money at that sort of price point. Then the CB1000 Hornet did kind of the same. They also launched the new GB350S in the UK as well, which, I think is another bike that represents brilliant value for money. And so it looks like they're continuing this approach with, in advance of Eicma, the CB1000F Retro, which is going to undercut a lot of the competition on the retro market. And now, new for Eicma, the CB1000 GT Sports Tourer, which again at just under 12 grand, including, this 150 horsepower inline 4, semi-active electronically adjustable suspension, looks like an absolute bargain. On top of that, we covered the new e-clutch bikes. So the 750s are now available with e-clutch, both the Transalp and the Hornet. The 500s, so the NX 500, the 500 Hornet, the CBR 500 are sports bike. They can get e-clutch as well. And that sits alongside the 650s, which were already available with it. And so there's lots more options now if you want an affordable bike that's easy to ride with that twist and go action. Then one of my bikes of the show was the prototype of their V3 e-compressor engine. It's called the V3R900. There's a full video on that. We also saw their WN7, the electric bike, for the first time in the flesh. And I believe there are other model updates, fairly minor ones, to stuff like the Goldwing. We'll do a full wrap-up at Motorcycle Live, or MCL, of the Honda stand, and make sure we cover some of those minor updates. So do hit subscribe if you've not already to see some of our manufacturer-specific roundups from that show. Indian, well, they've announced a few bikes here. They're in a bit of a transition to new ownership after being sold by Polaris, but there was a Sport Scout RT, so a little bit of a fairing and some of those small high-mounted side cases. There's a Sport Scout 60 as well, so a slightly tuned down engine, slightly more affordable. But perhaps the biggest kind of announcement or non-announcement is the fact that their Thunderstroke air-cooled engine, this big, torquey beast of an engine, well, the Tourers and Baggers on that platform will no longer be available in the UK and Europe. I think stricter emissions regulations have meant it's getting harder and harder to maintain them. And also, last year, they announced their new Power Plus liquid-cooled models, and so it looks like they're set to replace them. I guess it's a bit of a shame if you like that really authentic American V-twin character. Kawasaki, well, they had a few announcements in the lead up. They've refreshed the Z900 RS Retro. They announced the Z1100 Naked. And really, the only new thing to see was the ZX10R sports bike, which has come back with these fairly substantial aero appendages up front. I like the paint job as well. I always think the ZX10R looks pretty good, but perhaps this is another one to cover in a bit more detail at MCL. Moto Guzzi are building a new factory. I said that in our preview, so I wasn't expecting anything humongous from them. All they really did was give their bikes new paint jobs and new graphics. So the V7, the kind of retro, the V85 retro adventure bike, and then their Stelvio, the liquid-cooled adventure bike. They've all got new paint and new graphics, so we'll flash up a few on the screen now so you can have a little look. I do seem to remember the V85 catching my eye the most in the lime green. It looks like the same green that they did the V7 Sport in last year. So yeah, that looks like quite a nice option if you like that more vibrant kind of finish. MV Agusta, well, one of the bikes of the show for me was their new Brutale Serie Oro. It's a top dog 300 unit production to introduce this new 950 version of the Brutale. It's absolutely dripping in beautiful finish, beautiful styling, top spec components, but actually they've also made some quite practical changes, like a more torquey engine, a slightly longer wheelbase to make it a little more stable, and also a revised riding position that should make it a little more comfy while still keeping it feeling quite sporty. Beautiful, probably unaffordable to most of us. But perhaps something that flew under the radar that sounds really interesting is this new 5-cylinder engine, which they had to the side of the stand in a kind of glass case. Now, I believe a press release is coming out for this soon. They sort of just put the engine on the stand with no public information, just to generate a bit of buzz, I guess, and see what people thought of it. Genuinely, after speaking to them, I think this might be one of the biggest developments of the year. It just sounds wild what they're planning with it, and so I'll follow up as soon as I can with more information as soon as I get that press release and I've got it all signed off and written out, because otherwise I'd be kind of guessing or paraphrasing what I kind of heard firsthand on the stand. But keep your eyes peeled for that one, because it does sound like a truly innovative approach to building an engine. Norton, we covered all of these, so go have a look if you will. The Manx R sports bike. Again, one of the most beautiful bikes, I think, launched at this year's show. The Manx is the naked version. We did a short segment on that towards the end of our Manx R video. Not quite as jaw-droppingly beautiful, I'd say, as the Manx R, but still quite a nice looking bike. And then the Atlas and Atlas GT adventure bikes, which look to be more affordable, but still have a few interesting features. That one's just under kind of 600. One thing we didn't get a chance to show you from the press event that we went to in the pre-shoot is they actually have quite a few different paint options for the Manx R and Manx. Some of those were actually displayed on the stand at Eicma, but we didn't go and check it out because we'd already covered those bikes in the most detail. So hopefully Tim's editing this one and he can put a few pictures of the different colours of bike that will be available on the screen now, so you can have a look and see what you think of those. Enfield, we just covered the Bullet 650, which is a traditional looking version of their 650 platform. A little bit heavy because it's got all the extra metal work, but it has a certain, reassurance to the level of finish. Everything feels solid. It's beautifully painted as well. So one to look at if you like them old school. They also did a classic 650 special edition. They announced the new Mana Black version of the Himalayan 450 adventure bike. There was a custom from Rough Crafts on their Shotgun 650 platform, a scramblery looking version of their Flying Flea electric bike, which I actually think looks really, really good, and we'll definitely follow up on that one. But the thing I'm gutted I missed is I assumed from checking their press releases and stuff that they hadn't shown the Himalayan 750 adventure bike, which is one of the most anticipated bikes of the last few years, certainly in the Enfield lineup. We know it's coming. They've teased it on their social media. I've shown some spy shots that have been sent in our weekly news roundup as well. And so yeah, I didn't think they'd taken it along with them, and that was one of the bigger disappointments for me of the show, because I thought it was almost nailed on that they'd fully announce it. Thing is, it was actually there. It was at the side of the stand in this sort of crate. I don't know if they unveiled it straight away at the beginning of the show or if they unveiled it after a few days, but it was sort of taped off and made to look a little bit unofficial, let's say. And so my bad, I would have loved to have filmed that one, but hopefully we'll catch it another time soon. Maybe, you never know, it will be at Motorcycle Live as well. Suzuki, this is such an unusual bike. It's like an SV650 on the bottom half, and then it's got a bigger tank, it's got luggage, it's got a fairing, and also an electronic throttle, so it's got riding modes, traction control, and a quick shifter. And so it's like they've taken the SV650 platform and just kind of, I don't know, it's not a bad job they've done. It looks kind of cool when you see it in the flesh, but it's sort of thinking, well, what can we do to make it look more modern without truly really getting stuck into much of the chassis? A lot of the components are the same, without getting too stuck into the engine as well. And so this is another one that I'd really love to know your thoughts on down in the comments. Interestingly, they had, I would say, the best looking girls on the stands. And I don't know if that's like inverse to how attractive they think the bike's going to be. If you go to MV Agusta with the new Brutale Serie Oro, if you go to Ducati with the new Hypermotard, there's no girls sat on the bikes. If you go to Suzuki, they've obviously pulled out all the stops and spent most of the budget on the girls. And it works. It was absolutely rammed, so fair play to them. Triumph, I expected nothing. The stand looked great with all these new bikes, the Trident 800, all the new Bonnevilles and stuff like that, but no specific announcements, although I do believe there's plenty coming over the next 2 months. If you look at their website where they've got their schedule for all these bikes they're announcing, they say 29 new models or refreshes for 2026. It does confirm that there will be stuff in November and in December, and I assume maybe January, February. So keep your eyes peeled and keep yourself subscribed if you want to see those as soon as they're announced. We'll definitely have all the details. Yamaha R7 got a ride-by-wire throttle as well, so more tech there. Cruise control, riding modes, and traction control brings it bang up to date. A TFT dash, they've made changes to the chassis as well to improve the handling. But I think my favourite thing on the whole stand had to be this 70th anniversary paint job that they've made available on pretty much all the sports bikes, I think. But it looked very much at home on the R7. At least a nice change from the typical blue or black. And also they had the original R7 World Superbike Homologation Special alongside the current R7. Not particularly similar bikes, but they did both look quite cool in that same kind of red, black and white finish. So definitely think that's going to be a popular paint job for 2026. As always, I'd love to know what you think of the bike, so do let us know down in the comments below. We'll put our full Eicma playlist on the screen now, so if you did miss any of those videos, you can filter back through and find more details. Do hit subscribe as well if you've not already, if you want to see all of the latest stuff from Motorcycle Live. We'll kind of group up by manufacturer, but also I think there are going to be some bikes announced there, so there's definitely stuff we're going to go and look to cover. I believe Langham, for example, a British manufacturer, have this bonkers bike called the Lightspeed, which is due to be on the stand. So we'll do some individual bikes as well, but do hit subscribe if you want to see all our stuff. A massive thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next video.